So we had refreshers to the MacBook Pros and also the Mac Mini. And we also have the brand new M2 Pro and M2 Max chipset. And the M2 Pro has been put inside the Mac Mini for the first time. However, how does the M2 Pro perform in these new devices that Apple have given us? How do they compare to the last generation? Well, today I'm going to give you my first impressions of the M2 Pro Mac Mini and also the M2 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro 2. So the brand new M2 Pro chipset is an enhancement of last year's M1 Pro chipset, and this time we've actually got additional cores all around. So the M2 Pro chipset has enhancements over the M1 Pro chipset, mainly in its cores. Whereas last year the M2 Pro gave us up to 10 CPU cores and up to 16 GPU cores, this time around we actually have up to 12 CPU cores and we actually have up to 19 GPU cores. And those cores consume in the CPU of 4 efficiency cores, up by 2 from last year, and we also have 8 performance cores. And then for the GPU, we actually have an additional amount of cores. We can actually have 3 more this time, up from the 16 up to 19. Now there is a binned version of the M2 Pro chipset that you can buy, and this will give you a 10-core CPU. And in this one you get 4 efficiency cores and you also get 6 performance cores. You can also get a binned M2 Pro chipset 2, and this gives us 10 CPU cores, up from the 8 CPU cores we got in the M1 Pro last year, and this consumes of 4 efficiency cores and 6 performance cores. Then on top of this as well, you can also get the bin GPU, which gives us 16 GPU cores instead of the 14 that we got last year with the M1 Pro. Initial GeekBench scores have shown that the M2 Pro is definitely faster for its CPU cores with the additional cores, even over the M1 Max. But with the M2 Pro, with only having 19 GPU cores, and the smallest M1 Max comes with 24 GPU cores, even though the M2 Pro's GPU cores are a little bit more tweaked up for a bit more performance, it still can't beat the M1 Max in GPU performance, and also in video decoding and encoding sort of bits and pieces like that. There has also been a few additional bits and pieces added to the Mac Mini, mainly with the back ports, as you can see here. We actually have a few more Thunderbolt ports this time round, and also, as you know, with the M2 normal chipset, the Mac Mini comes in at a far cheaper price. But with the M2 Pro, MacBook Pro 14-inch, there are definitely a few other changes too. And in fact, I'm just going to run through a summary of the review specs of what the 14-inch MacBook Pro M2 Pro has to offer us. So here we are then, we have the brand new MacBook Pro 14-inch M2 Pro on the left side and the MacBook Pro 14-inch M1 Pro from 2021. Today I'm going to be reviewing the standard M2 Pro and the M1 Pro chipset, not the binned version. So starting off then, what we have the display type. So the display technology in both of these MacBook Pros are identical. The mini LED Pro Motion display first debuted on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro in 2021, and then later on that year it came to the 14 and to the 16-inch MacBook Pros. So both of these models have the exact same screen inside them. What is the mini LED Pro Motion display? The screen size of this 14-inch isn't exactly 14 inches, it's actually 14.2 inches, and the main reason is it houses up that little notch at the top, and that's where that extra 0.2 of an inch comes into play basically, because of that notch in the middle, what houses the webcam or the FaceTime camera, what I'll talk a little bit further on into this video. But the actual screen resolutions on both of these MacBook Pros are identical, and that resolution is 3024 by 1964, what is a fantastic resolution for a MacBook or any laptop this size, to be honest. Then what that basically sort of converts to is pixels per inch. And basically both of these MacBook Pros have the exact same pixels per inch, or PPI, what is 254, and which coincidentally is also the exact same of pixels per inch what you get on the 16-inch MacBook Pro 2 with the mini LED display. So they're exactly the same, the pixels per inch, 254 of them. Next of all, we actually have the display refresh rate. So we have a 120 Hz refresh rate. That's that Pro Motion display, and that's on both of these MacBook Pros. So the display can go up to 120 Hz, what is really quite fantastic for doing all sort of your editing and also maybe a little bit of gaming too, if you wanted to do that on the MacBook Pro. The brightness as well is exactly the same on both of these MacBook Pros, the 14-inch, and it's 1000 nits. So basically this means if you've got light coming in onto your screen, if you're outdoors for example, and you've got bright light hitting onto your screen, the 1000 nits will help you definitely out there. So yeah, it's really good to see that. And also both of these displays also have True Tone technology inside them. Moving on to the processor and CPU, and this is where the biggest change probably happens the most in the 14-inch MacBook Pros. So right now we have the M1 Pro, this is the first one I want to talk about, and the 14-inch model, the M1 Pro, the normal chipset has a 10-core CPU. And in that 10-core CPU, what we actually have is we have 2 efficiency cores and 8 performance cores, and then we've also got the GPU, the graphics inside that, and that goes up to 16 cores inside that for the GPU. But you can also get the binned version of the M1 Pro, and that comes with an 8-core CPU, and that comes with 2 efficiency cores, 6 performance cores, and also the GPU only has 14 GPU cores inside it. But the MacBook Pro 14-inch M2 Pro is a different story. This time, what you actually have for the standard M2 Pro chipset is actually you have a 12-core CPU, and this is 2 efficiency cores, and then also this is now 10 sort of performance cores inside. Was absolutely remarkable. And then also for the GPU, you can go up to a 19-core GPU, which is also really fantastic. But you can also pick the binned version of the M2 Pro, and this comes with a 10-core CPU. And again, this has 2 efficiency cores, 8 performance cores, and then you also can pick a 16-core GPU with that, the binned version on this. So you can see here then, for either the binned version or the normal version of the M2 Pro over the M1 Pro, you'll definitely be getting more cores, and you'll see why this is important a bit more later on. But next of all, let's move on to the RAM amounts. Now, RAM amounts for the M2 Pro and the M1 Pro, the choices are exactly the same. You can either pick 16GB or 32GB of RAM. Unfortunately, you cannot pick any more RAM like 24GB of RAM, like what you can do with the MacBook Air, or you can do that with the M2 MacBook Pro. What is a little bit unusual in my opinion that that option isn't there. But anyway, those are the choices that you have got for that. Then also we have the storage amounts. Now, storage amounts are exactly the same as last time with the M1 Pro 14-inch. You can choose from 512GB all the way up to 8TB with your M1 Pro or the M2 Pro chipset. And just in case you're wondering, for GeekBench 5 multi-core score, and this is on the normal M1 Pro, not the binned version, and also the normal M2 Pro, again not the binned version, the MacBook Pro M1 Pro with the 14-inch comes in at 12,037, but the new M2 Pro normal version comes in at 13,728. And remember, Apple claiming up to 20% more performance on the M2 Pro over the M1 Pro. Then moving on, we do have ports. So the ports wise, they are very similar. We have 3x USB-C ports, what are Thunderbolt 4 ports and USB 4 ports on that. So that's really cool. We still have the MagSafe 3 port as well. It's really good. But HDMI is available on both these machines, except for you can also get up to 8K HDMI on the M2 Pro, what is really fantastic to see. We also do have the SDXC card slot as well, so the SD card slot, so that's really good to have that. And then moving on to operating system, both of these machines can run the latest macOS 13 Ventura, and most likely the M2 Pro will probably be able to support operating systems probably for the next, say, 5 to 6 years, whereas probably the M1 Pro probably about the next 4 to 5 years instead. So there is a bit of a difference there, mainly because obviously this version of the M2 Pros come out in 2023, and the M1 Pro came out in 2021, the end of that year. Moving on then to battery life. So battery life has changed ever so slightly. So with the MacBook Pro 14-inch M1 Pro, you could get up to 17 hours of battery life. But now with the 14-inch M2 Pro, you can get up to 18 hours. So this basically means Apple have made their chipset a little bit more efficient in the M2 Pro. But if you were to do sort of hardcore video editing or photo editing, you probably wouldn't notice the difference really in sort of battery life. This is literally pushing the MacBooks out to the extreme with really low brightness and not pushing out the MacBooks to do heavy tasks that you'll probably actually gain this extra hour. But that's about it really. For charging wattage, it's up to 96 watts on the M1 Pro and the M2 Pro. It's exactly the same. It's a little less if you get the bin version. I think it's 69 watts on that one. But for the normal M1 Pro and the normal M2 Pro, it is 96 watts. And again, it's a MagSafe charger to charge this up. The actual weight of these MacBook Pros are exactly the same again. They both weigh 1.5 kilograms, except for I would say that if you did have a number next to that 5 of the 1.5, the M2 Pro is ever so slightly heavier in like a couple of grams, but you would not notice it at all. It's really, really hard to actually tell the difference between both of these models. But obviously, as it's a slightly bigger chipset, the M2 Pro, it's slightly more understanding why. Then we also have got the stereo speakers. Both of these MacBook Pros have the exact same speaker sets inside them, and they're also spatial audio for their stereo speaker set. Then moving on to Wi-Fi, things change ever so slightly here. So the MacBook Pro 14-inch M2 Pro actually has Wi-Fi 6E, whereas the MacBook Pro 14-inch M1 Pro actually only has Wi-Fi 6. So yeah, it has a slightly newer technology inside it. Then let's talk about the price. And this is the most interesting thing. So basically the prices of both of these MacBooks are exactly the same price as of when they were launched. With the 16-inch MacBook Pros though, if you got yourself the M1 Max chipset inside it, funny enough, it does actually cost $200 more. But here, with the binned M1 Pro and the binned M2 Pro, they start out at $1,999 US, what is exactly the same price. So with the MacBook Pro 14-inch M2 Pro, it is a really, really good deal, because even if you pick the binned version of the M2 Pro over the M1 Pro, you will definitely get at least 2 more GPU cores and 2 more CPU cores, and plus those cores are also clocked even faster, and also the MacBook Pro is even more efficient as well, as you've seen, as I've talked about in this comparison. So it's really good to actually get that price. So I'm really, really happy with that Apple have done that, and that is for the 512GB model. The colors are exactly the same again. You get yourself a sort of a grey and what is the space grey, and there's also the silver color too. And then finally, what new MacBook are you planning to buy this year? Will it be one of these new MacBook Pros with the M2 Pro, or maybe you might hunt down an M1 Pro? So as you can see here, we do actually have some adjustments to the M2 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro. We do have that new HDMI port with the 2.1 port instead of display up to 8K video. And also we do have the M2 Pro and the M2 Max that can go inside this MacBook Pro. And the same with the Mac Mini. Like I said, the main difference is this time is the M2 Pro has been introduced, and that is really, really cool. To be honest, in my opinion, I'm a big fan of the Mac Mini having the M2 Pro inside it, and a lot of you guys are wondering, definitely to do with sort of actual sort of throttling issues and things like this. And personally, if anything, I would actually say, being that the Mac Mini, as you can see here, does actually have a thicker sort of casing than say the MacBook Pro, I actually say throttling issues are more likely going to be inside the MacBook than they are inside the Mac Mini, in my opinion. Because just look at that in thickness sorts of sizes, you can see there's definitely a difference there. And I would personally say there's more space and probably room to breathe inside this than there is inside the MacBook Pro. But we will see very soon into the future. And in fact, if you do want to see a video about that, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now and hit the notification bell to find out when that video does come out. And also guys, it's time to wrap this up. So if you have enjoyed watching it, please do press the like button. And if you want to hear the latest Apple news, reviews, and comparisons, please also make sure that you tune into my next video. Until next time guys, I will see you really soon. Bye bye.